Welcome to the bottom of the rabbit hole. Salute to all the Matrix University subscribers tuning in. You are appreciated. In this video, I'm going to share the introduction to the 20th anniversary addition to the Matrix comics. And if this is your first time down here, or you want to know everything about the Matrix universe, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you do not miss out on any new content. Here at Matrix University, the goal has always been to create a space where Matrix fans can trust the information and to present details within the Matrix media that you might have missed or that rarely get discussed. In the What is Official Canon livestream with Vesuvius MXO, we went through each comic to determine which stories were canon, but I hadn't yet given a full analysis of each Matrix comic. When I read the introduction to the hardcover 20th anniversary edition written by creator Spencer Lamm, I realized that his perspective and insight was one that other hardcore fans would still be able to appreciate and the best place to start. Introduction. This book was never supposed to exist. When we began commissioning these stories set in the real world of the Matrix, they were released exclusively online at thematrix.com. Eventually, 4 years after our original online launch, we printed 2 paperback collections. Still, we didn't publish everything. This updated and expanded 20th anniversary edition of the Matrix comics presents 28 stories, including 4 new to print, by a roster of talent who have collectively won every award given out for comics many times over. Creators who have consistently redefined what comics can be. How exactly did these stories happen? This goes directly to Lana and Lily Wachowski. It was 1998, and Lana, Lily, and I had already been talking about creating Matrix comics for over a year before the first film was even greenlit. The 3 of us met working at Marvel, and our love of the medium was always front and center. Our conversations about comics and who we wanted to work with sprawled, fueling an ever-growing list. While the official website grew to include way more, it started with the comics, and right then the speculation of what these Matrix comics could be was everything. At the beginning we talked about 10 stories, and always with this idea of publishing them online. Today, a great many people read comics digitally, but in 1998 few did. There were no rules, so for a heartbeat, we explored options other than going with the traditional comic format. In glass towers, on high floors, I met with self-proclaimed avant-garde futurists. They knew where comics were heading. One energetic CEO said, "Wait until you see this," as he walked me towards a dozen employees standing around a computer, all straining to look amped. The CEO nodded to the operator at the keyboard, who dramatically hit a single key. I was told this might take an extra minute because the code wasn't optimized. It'll be way faster in the final. On screen, there was the slow crawl of a forgotten relic, the loading screen, and when the animation finally came up, I was watching a blocky cartoon girl running. This was many steps below the poorest Saturday morning cartoon from the 80s. The room turned to me with expectations. The CEO said, "Wow, right? Imagine it's Trinity. This is going to blow minds." I said nothing. He said pow pow with finger guns. He might have only shocked me more with real guns. Looking back, we were right there with Neo dodging bullets. Most of the online comics that were developed when we launched our first stories on the internet are now barely a footnote. Today, online comics are most often traditionally 2D art, presented digitally, like we were pioneering. We didn't know the future. We simply kept coming back to our love of comics and our appreciation of their history. Some of that history is personal. When I was 8, my dad took me fishing for the first time. I was a restless kid, and I didn't take well to sitting still, the quiet, the waiting. I remember our stopping at an ungodly hour for breakfast in a tackle shop. From a spinner rack of comics, my dad bought me a copy of the Invincible Iron Man, and by the end of the day, I'd been reading and rereading for hours. I almost remember how awesome my dad was, encouraging me to find my own passions, and I still have that comic, with its ripples in the pages from the saltwater, and it still holds magic for me. So when the film was greenlit, and we got going with the comics full on, we were ready. We made the easy choice of avoiding loading screens and voiceovers and other flash-in-the-pan approaches. With immense enthusiasm, we began reaching out to comic writers and artists on our ever-growing list, asking them to work in the medium they knew best, and for their work to be turned in as if we were going to print, even if our primary goal right then was releasing them online. Some of the artists we knew from Marvel, others friends, yet others we sent emails introducing ourselves. In those earlier days, we'd send the screenplay. There was no security, no fandom, no film, just the script. This was not a blockbuster yet, and there were no guarantees. Those who responded did so on the strength of the story. So it's an especially hearty thank you to Bill, Billy, Jim, Michael, Neil, Paul, Ted, Tim, and Vince for entering the Matrix before the film was even released. Of all the stories, however, our first up, Bits and Pieces of Information, deserves special mention. This was a collaboration between comic book creator Jeff Darrow and the Wachowskis themselves, telling a story about the prehistory of the Matrix itself, made even more noteworthy because Jeff was also the lead concept designer of the films. His one-of-a-kind vision and highly detailed illustrations played a significant role in the look and world building of the films. Also cool, this story was later expanded into the two-part anime episode, The Second Renaissance, part of the Animatrix series, which also premiered at the official site years before streaming became commonplace, one section over from the comics. There were, of course, some stories that got away. One person who responded exuberantly, saying yes before the film came out, was the world-renowned firebrand of a writer, Harlan Ellison. He jumped right in, and he never officially stopped writing a story for us, as he'd mention it every time we talked for the next few years. I'm sad to say we never received the final draft. He is missed. Digging through the archives, there were many memories like this. You'll note an amazing piece at the back of the book by Michael Kaluta. Timing didn't allow a full story from him, but he still gave us an amazing illustration, and again, this is its first time in print. While millions have had access to these pieces online, it's especially gratifying getting more of this work into book form. In my heart, like the Renegade Fireman and a certain Ray Bradbury story, I'm a person of the book, and this work deserves to be preserved and on shelves. I'll also admit, it was pretty bloody amazing routinely waking to incoming pages from Bill S., Dave Gibbons, Peter Bage, Tim Sale, and for that matter, words by Neil Gaiman, and I'm powerfully tempted to simply list everyone, as it's true all the way through. For space, check out the table of contents. Suffice to say, I'm exceedingly grateful to each and every talented person in this book who was willing to share their time and craft with us. As to what's new here, this collection includes everything from our first 2 volumes, plus never before printed stories by Paul Chadwick, Greg Ruth, Tommy Lee Edwards, and a Ted McKeever plot illustrated by Caron Grant. Also look to the back of the book for a collection of pinups and logo-less covers, with a couple of especially awesome drawings by Jeff Darrow, opposite final color, as it really is something getting to see the details in his line work. And what exactly are those tiny words on the end pages you need a magnifying glass to read? They're a deep dive sampling of the news updates from thematrix.com, from our earliest days, back when the news feed was chock-a-block with Matrix comic announcements. This was a time when we were expanding the comics and the website as a whole at an exhilarating pace, adding content like the above-mentioned Animatrix shorts, and also the philosophy section, interviews from filming, VR set tours, how they did that VFX articles, digital 3D model kits utilizing the same detailed Maya files created for the film, like of the Nebuchadnezzar ship, retro video games with active scoreboards from Government Lobby to Tunnel Recon, concept art, and storyboards with artist commentaries, behind-the-scenes photos, codes for hidden sections, and before social media, constant updates. All across hundreds of pages, with millions of weekly page views. Yet, for all our expanding, everything we did online grew from the idea of those first 10 stories. So here, in this 20th anniversary edition, the comics are deservedly front and center. Are we forgetting the films? Never. The films are the start and the heart, and I'm excited to write. Pre-production is well underway on a 4th Matrix film, with Lana directing and both Keanu and Carrie Ann returning. Buckle up. Filming begins anew in 2020. For now, turn these pages under azure skies with sea-kissed air, on a boat with your dad, or anywhere, anyhow. There is no book, yet there is, and it's glorious. Best from New York City. Spencer Lamm, November 2019. End quote. The Matrix comics are yet another example of just how innovative the Matrix franchise was in regards to spreading the universe across multiple media platforms. Many Matrix fans don't know that they started working on these comics in 1998 before the movie was even released. I would have loved to have seen a Matrix comic written by Harlan Ellison. I mentioned him briefly in another video and talked about his connection to the Terminator franchise, but I digress. Lamm also mentioned that the Wachowski written comic, Bits and Pieces of Information, was expanded into the Animatrix episode, The Second Renaissance. I already broke down each episode in the Animatrix playlist here on this channel. Now that I'm going to provide analysis of each individual Matrix comic, the introduction to the 20th anniversary edition, felt like the perfect behind-the-scenes perspective to share. I've already broken down the details and subtext of bits and pieces of information in the B166ER trial video. I'll leave a link in the description for anyone who needs to get caught up. You can support the channel by ordering your Matrix University merch at our Teespring shop. And remember, as one realizes that one is a dream figure in another person's dream, that is self-awareness.